Well, this is my John Deere 310C, which I bought at the Ernie Sourballs farm auction 4 or 5 years ago. Pretty good machine. A few things wrong with it. They were built from 1986 to 1990. So that would make this 86, 96, 06, 16. It could be anywhere 30, 35 years old. So anyway, it's been dying on me after a few minutes, and so I kind of diagnosed it down. Hopefully, we're going to put a fuel pump in it today. First thing you want to do is pull that oil filter off and get you some room in there, because this is pretty tight and it's pretty dark. It looks light, but this camera picks up a lot of light, and it's pretty dark in there actually. So you want to try to clamp off your fuel line. That's your fuel line. This is a diesel, not a gasoline. I'll be doing some stuff with the grinder that you would not do if it was gasoline, but with diesel, if you're careful, you can kind of get by a little bit. So anyway, here's our fuel line from the tank, and I cannot reach the bottom of the tank to see if there is a fuel shutoff. I have no idea if there is one or if there's not one, but I can't get to it. You'd have to pull the whole cowl off the engine. It sits up on the other side at the back, and I have no idea if there's one or not. It'd be nice if there was one out here. It would be nice, but I didn't want to ruin that $75 fuel line by cutting into it, to tell you the truth. So you want to get that line off, and then this is a 1/2 inch. You'll need a flex socket. It's a 1/2 inch. At least on this one it was. Probably they all are. And get it off there some way. And the fuel line running out of the pump to the filter is at the back, and it's virtually impossible to get to. So you got to get your bolts off and pull the pump away from the block to be able to do anything with it. If you noticed, I just dropped one of the bolts on the right side out, and I never did find it. So there is right there's the back of the pump, and I bought a 12-inch pair of 12-inch vice grips to hang on to this thing when it's back there, and very handy tool. These vice grips, I love this thing. We should have had them sooner. Very handy. So anyway, you want to get that off, and then you can decide if you can get that fuel line hooked back up, depending on variables of the way the new one's built. And this line here was heavy duty steel. It's thick and it's steel, and I couldn't do anything with it at all. So I decided to put a flex line on the fuel pump, and so I'm going to cut that line there loose, and then use it out and run it from there around. And now I could not see this gasket stuff on this base, but I picked it up from the camera when I was editing, and realized I had to do something with it. But it's really dark in there. Now I don't see as good as I used to. I'll be 80 years old this summer, and I don't see as good, and I'm not as spry as I once was. So I got a little tired doing this one. This was it's not an easy job, not terrible hard, but it's tight up in there. It's just tight. And so here we're going to switch our fittings from the old pump to the new pump. And if you've got some kind of a phone with a camera thing on it, you're wise if you take a picture of the angle that those fittings are coming out of the old pump before you take them loose. Take you a couple snapshots of them, and then when you go into the new one, you'll be able to get that photo and see if you're doing right or not. And these are on this particular one. That's an 1/8 inch pipe thread, so you'll want some Teflon tape or some dope or something to put in there. And I always do. I was taught to go 3 times around the threads, and that's usually sufficient. So here's where you'll, once you get it started, it should start easy. On this one, everything, the pump looks different, but the height of the fittings and the bolts and everything matched up. I got it off of, I think I got it off of eBay, and they're selling, well, they claim they sold, I don't know, 10 or 15 a month. So if they're buying that many, the thing must fit, or else they're sending them all back, which I doubt. But there, I've got the iPhone, got a picture on it. I'm gonna try to adjust the fitting to where it's at least it's close. You're not going to get it exact, but if you can get it close, you should be able to make it work. And you want it tight, but remember that your fitting, depending on the thickness of the pump's case, you could split it if you get it too tight. So you don't want to get a 36-inch pipe wrench. You start putting it on with that. So now we're going to do, okay, here you want to make sure that you can get your flex socket on the new pump, on the bolt. Now on this one I could not. It would not go. So I had bought a little portable grinder, battery powered, because I'm a couple hundred, well, about 300 feet from the house. A lot of extension cords to get there, so I bought a little battery powered grinder. And if you see on the left side of that socket right there, that's a rivet holding that thing on. I had to grind a little, just like a 1/16 of an inch off that rivet, and then the flex socket would go on the bolt. But you want to test all this stuff before you get up in there. Run a tap through the threads in the block and clean them out, and take the bolt that you're actually going to use and make sure it'll go in the threads. So that if there's a burr, you'll catch it. You're not going to know what's going on when you're putting it in, because you can't see what you're doing. So here I'm grinding off that rivet, and then you want to, of course, you want to test it after. Make sure you can get down there. And here's the little grinder here, and love this thing. It's got a case. Wasn't all that expensive, but it's got a case with it. You're not using it from production, so any quality at all is going to last you for years. But it's very, very handy not having to have an extension cord, I'll tell you that. Very handy. So here it's now. Hopefully I'll show you where I checked the bolt. I think I showed it on here. Hopefully I did. We'll find out anyway. We get you one of that size, and okay. As you can see now, it will. So now when you're putting this thing on, you know it's going to work, and that'll be the bottom of it. That's not the top. That'll be the bottom. You won't be able to see this, because that's the bottom there. So you'll be going basically by feel. Now here we're going to cut this line right here. And you'd never do this with a gasoline, ever. You do this with a diesel. You kind of watch yourself, and you're okay. Put some blockage up at the top up there, and to catch the sparks, to keep. But if you spray a little carburetor cleaner on it first and get the loose stuff off. But you'd never do this with gasoline. Never, 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 never. Blow up, and you got a $18,000 piece of junk right there. So, but a guy offered me $15 for this whole thing, and so I know it's worth they're not cheap, I'll tell you that. So anyway, there's we've got that, and here we're going to clean the burrs off of our line. This will go on the back of the fuel pump, and I routed it between the alternator and the oil filter. So you got it. Don't forget, you got to put your oil filter back on when you're done. So you want to test this as you're going and make sure you're getting it to where that once you get your fuel line on, you can still get your oil filter back on. It's not that difficult as long as you think of it. but almost didn't. It was I caught it, but that will angle up to the front, and there's plenty of room there to put a flex line on. You might be able to get the old line on. I'm not saying nobody couldn't do it, but I was having a little trouble with it, and I didn't think I'd be able to get the bolts started again. This just seemed like an end. I had 4 or 5 foot of fuel line. Fuel line now is, I don't know, $8 or $9 a foot. So, man, it'll scare you when you go in to buy it. So what do we got going here? Well, that's my head. I'm getting see if we can see one of my where I'm thinning now. Now you didn't see nothing there. All right, here we go. We're gonna. There we go. There's a little red spot where I'm either bump my head or I'm getting a little thin at the back. But here, see here. There, I got it out of the way. Now you can see there that if you hadn't tested that, you could think that something was wrong when it wouldn't go on. But if you know it will go, then you're set. So, and this wasn't real bad. The cam, which activates the fuel pump, the cam was in the right position, that I didn't have to use a longer bolt to pull it in place or anything. It went on. That part of it went on pretty good. So I've had them where you would have to put a longer bolt and push it down that bolt and change the stud out and put another bolt in. It can be fun at times. Excuse me. So here we're gonna get the left side. At least we're gonna attempt to, and we tested it so we know it'll go, because we've checked it out. We've checked the threads. We've cleaned the threads in the block. We've tested the bolt in the block, so we know it will go. So if it's having trouble here, it's simply because it's out of position a little bit. That's the thing of it. Oh, I know what it was. I didn't have the right. There we go. There's the bolt. That bolt there was the wrong one, and it was sticking back too far, and the wrench wouldn't catch it right. So there's the correct bolt. So there, I'm preaching to you, and I didn't even do it. So here we go. Now we're going to give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Hopefully I got the right one that time. But now when you're doing this, you're doing it by feel. So don't get nervous. Take your time. But you can tell when you've hit the threads. And if it's turning hard, you need to back it out and kind of start again, because there's something off center. You haven't hit the right starter thread on the bolt or in the block or something. But you've already tested it. You know it'll go. So you take your time there. Now, if we've got it, we should see the fuel pump start to move a little bit, pulling itself. There we go. Fuel pump starting to move, pulling itself around square. There we go. So now I had to. There was a lot of wind noise, and I had to mute this whole film. I call it. I had to mute the whole thing before it started because there was so much wind noise. And tried it once, and you just couldn't hear. So you won't be able to hear it run or anything, because I had to. It's all on one sequence, and there's no way that I'm smart enough to know how to do that on just part of it. So, but it does sound good, and it does. When I started, it did start on about the third crank, and. Now that little lever at the bottom down there is a pump, and you pull that lever, and you can fill the fuel filter up. And this has got the square fuel filter that fits in a base. It doesn't have the spin on. It's got the square one. I put a new one on a while back, and it is not easy. I'll tell you that. If I ever had to do another one, I'd be tempted to call John Deere out and just pay them, but. No more than what I use this thing, it should be a long time. Now here I always put 3 hose clamps on when I do something like this, because you don't want it leaking. You do not want it leaking. There's my serial number down there. There's one on the frame or one on the block and one on the frame, out by the door somewhere. And here we're going to tighten up. There's our, okay, that's our fuel line from the tank right there. And that's what feeds the thing. Now this thing just went dark, and I'm hoping, okay, we're still good. Just my computer. Okay, there is we got that tight, and you see how our line's running, and now we should be doing, yeah, gonna put a little grease on the oil filter. And you want to put a new oil filter on. Whenever you get something like this, you got a chance to stick one on there, because you do more good with filters than with, well, I don't want to say that you don't need to change the oil, but in a case like this, putting the new oil filter on is just very good insurance. It's worth the $6 or $8 or whatever they cost. Now here I'm going to start it, and it started on like the second or third clamp, or a third try. And there I'm getting out, and I'm getting a little, like I say, I'll be 80 years old in a few months, and this summer, and well, I'll tell you what, time has went by fast. It really has. This is a hole to burn dead wood in. I've got a bunch of some old dead trees up there. We're going to cut them up, and this is basically a burn pit. And I think I've got it like, I don't know, 7-8 foot deep, and I'm gonna throw the stuff down in there and burn it. And I've done it on smaller places, smaller holes. But this one I got a lot of wood, so we're doing a pretty deep one. And it's pretty neat because it holds that heat down in there, and it really makes ash. My God, it's and there's not a lot of stuff coming out. Anyway, this thing's getting ready to end. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. And be safe. Be safe, because you can't be too safe with this stuff. This stuff will hurt you and maim you. So you never, ever, ever take a chance. Ever. Thanks for watching.